Up next, we're going to hear from a very good friend of mine, the Executive Deputy Chairman of IDA. Steve Leonard is going to take us away with some conversations on innovation. Steve, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Yossi. Okay, thank you, and thanks, Daniel, and thanks, Yossi and Lily. It's a great opportunity for us to talk about the whole backbone of this event. The whole idea is around innovation. Everybody's talking about innovation. Everybody would like to be more innovative. Everyone is talking about what they can do to unlock, to unleash innovation. So I'm going to share a couple of thoughts just to try and get us thinking a little bit. First of all, we need innovation. Smart nation needs innovation. And Minister Vivian will be talking more about what innovation means, smart nation means. But the backbone of this is we need to think about doing important, difficult, challenging, sometimes scary, often uncertain things. So smart nation needs innovation. Now, I'm going to try and take the other side of the argument a little bit because I see lots of companies, not only in Singapore but in other places too. And I want to be honest that sometimes we think about what we're doing here. And part of what I'd like to do is to come back and say, can we think about things in a bigger way? Can we stretch our thinking? Can we be more global in our thinking? Singapore is already a global player in so many ways, but oftentimes we start by thinking of something smaller than we should. So are we thinking too small? So when we talk about innovation, we need to describe or spend a little time on what it is and perhaps what it is not. So here's one of the things that I'd like to start with. This is a moonshot. Lots of other things that are described as moonshots are not. So when we talk about something which says, let's do something amazing, let's do something big, let's do something difficult, and we say it's a moonshot, that's a moonshot. That is a moonshot. So as an example, when it was decided to try and send a man to the moon and bring him back safely, which was the challenge, the US at that time had spent 15 minutes in space. Actually, suborbit, didn't even have an orbit, had spent 15 minutes. And then the challenge was go 380,000 kilometers to the moon, land, and come back. So the scale of all of the unknowns, the scale of all of the challenges was almost too big to even contemplate. So I just want to start off with, let's be really thoughtful about the things that we take on, and let's challenge ourselves for some really big and exciting ideas that then go on to unlock thousands of other ideas and innovations, which is one of the great legacies of the space program, was not just that, but all of the generations that it inspired and all of the technology that it unlocked and all of the problems that had to be solved. But to think about it, going there versus 15 minutes one time in space was the entire history of the space program when it was launched. So now we want to think about this continuum a little bit. So I like to think about this as two sides of a continuum. Productivity is great. We spend a lot of time thinking about productivity. We think about it, but let's also be honest about it. It's often thought of as continuous and incremental, meaning we have to often make improvements. We make incremental improvements, and that's great. Enhancing current process, optimizing current process, those are all important things. So productivity is amazing. But when we think about it, it's often efficiency. It's how can we improve and optimize. Now what we want to do is also think about how do we go to the other side of the continuum. How do we think about inventing? How do we think about things that are new and original? So as an example, most of the patents issued around the world these days tend to be combinations of things that were invented or discovered before, and there's a new combination of them now. So originally, much of the patenting was original. Now, it's recombinations of what went on before. Doesn't mean it's not important, but it's different. So when we think about it now, let's think about it as discontinuous, means lumpy, or comes in bursts. We want to think about it as things that are also exponential. Something that's 2 times, 3 times, an order of magnitude, 10 times better. So we've got continuous and incremental, and we've got non-continuous and breakthrough. And these are often replacements. What went on before is replaced entirely by something that we discover or work on now. That's the kind of innovation that we'd like to strive for more and more. Here's a quick example. When we take a look at the chart, now I need to be careful because I've got many esteemed professors and doctors in the room, but when I think about it, we've got things such as the stethoscope, which is good, solid workman technology. And we think about how can we make a doctor's visit a bit more fruitful, maybe last slightly less long so we can see more patients. Those are things that are important to do, but they're often thought of as efficiency and incremental. We've got emerging technologies such as flexible electronics that help you know, are you hydrated? Are you doing well? So how can these flexible electronics also help with concussion testing and so on? So new uses of some current and emerging technology, also cool. And then we've got things like the origami robot, which is an MIT development, which can be put into the gut. You swallow it. It's wrapped in a meat and ice package so that it gets through the digestive system. And then it also unfolds and through magnetic sensors can be operated inside the gut. So there's new and emerging technologies that could change the future of how healthcare is provided. So this type of technology and many other versions, such as how are you built, how does the food you eat affect you, what does it mean for the type of perfectly mixed antibiotics that you need so that we don't have rising antibiotic resistance all the time, these are important things. So we want to think of these more on the right-hand side, innovative, inventive. Okay, so this is what we're trying to work on together in Singapore. Now, our biggest challenge is not technology. We have amazing technology, we have great universities, we have amazing individuals and startups, and we have lots of investable capital. So it's not about technology, but it is about mindset. So lots of people are uncomfortable with the idea of autonomous vehicles. Lots of people are uncomfortable about having a medical consultation without sitting in front of their GP. There's lots of things that we could choose to do, and the technology would allow us to do, but there's the social adoption and the mindset. So one of our big challenges, and part of what we're trying to do through Unbound and the events that we're having today and tomorrow, is just to keep testing and pushing and saying, how can we make sure that we're thinking big and open to new ideas? Okay, so now as we continue on, here's how a lot of different meetings start. What if it doesn't work? So for those that are fans of SpaceX, this is one of the scenarios in which it didn't work. Right? Landed, Elon Musk sent out lots of tweets, said, okay, that didn't work, and that's a big public failure? I don't know. Learning point? So instead of it being a failure, is it a moment of learning? There's some adjustment, something else happens. So instead of starting always with what if it doesn't work, and it doesn't mean we don't want to think about the consequences, but what if it doesn't work is often an inhibitor to thinking about what we might be able to do. So the world is changed by people that often are open to this idea of, well, that's true, but what if it does? So this is the successful landing, and it's the same people, it's the same crew, but they learned from some of the other examples that went on before and had a successful landing. So what if it doesn't work can be replaced with what if it does? So if we can collectively say, good point, that's important for us to think about. Let's work on solving that issue or that problem. But what if it does work instead of limiting ourselves by thinking this way sometimes? Now, I came back to this example because this success has many different builders and heroes. As you may know, the program at its peak had 400,000 technicians, engineers, builders. So these things are a team sport, and part of my message is everybody has a role to play, whether in the creative side, the engineering side, the sciences side, the education side, whatever you're doing, there's a role for somebody because these are critical, tough challenges, and we have to work together. Here's one that I love to share as an example. So Margaret Hamilton, individually, is one of the reasons that the lunar module and the Apollo 11 mission worked. As a young researcher and later employee of MIT, Margaret was one of the original pioneers around the software development that went on to be the guidance control for the Apollo mission. And she felt that there was some risks in the way that the system had been architected, and raised some of that and said, if an astronaut presses the wrong button at the wrong time, here's what happens. And some of the senior leaders in NASA said, don't worry about that. No astronaut would make a mistake because they're trained so perfectly, and that will never happen. And then during the Apollo 11 mission, it did happen. There was a button mistakenly pressed, caused some of the system to have flooding. There was too many instructions coming in too quickly. Thankfully, Margaret had programmed the system in a way that allowed it to focus on its most important task, which was land the lunar module on the surface of the moon. Ignore everything else that's going on. So all the warning lights and everything that were flashing, the system said, land the lunar module. And so the source code for the guidance system that Margaret led the team to develop is shown on the right-hand side, and it was all of 64K memory for those that are interested in those sorts of things. So landed the lunar module and brought it home safely. So the point here is, again, lots of people, lots of skills, taking brave steps, solving problems, men, women, everybody's involved. So the message here is we need to do amazing things, and we have the ability to do amazing things in Singapore. Last message. Form and function. Sometimes we become enamored with the technology or the science or the engineering, and that's amazing. But there's also the creative side and the elegance side and the beauty and the design. So I love this shot, partly because it's where we're standing right now, Marina Bay Sands, and partly because it's a perfect way of representing form and function. So for everybody that thinks you're only relevant if you have this type of degree or this type of background, I'd like to say everybody has a role to play in building amazing companies and building amazing things. So form and function, without it, you don't have a winning thing, because people have to adopt it, people have to feel good about it. So Singapore has an opportunity to do something special, do something amazing, but we have to start by saying, think big, take risk, be open, and let's all work together to build Singapore. Thanks very much, and let's have a great event.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.